Hello all, good afternoon. Welcome to the technical working group call for the 18th of November 2021. We'll be continuing to move through the membership proposal, looking at the sections and appendices relevant to customer authentication and customer account management on the booking system. But before we kick off, if I could just ask everybody to introduce themselves. I'll just call on you in the order in which you appear on my screen. First of all, Andy Gordon.
Afternoon all, Andy Gordon from Gladstone, Senior Product Owner here, representing Gladstone, but also on behalf of Everyone Active as our customer.
Thank you, Andy. Stephen Winfield.
Yeah, good afternoon, everybody. Stephen Winfield, GNL Digital Services Manager.
Thank you very much, Steve. Nathan.
Hi, I'm Nathan Salter. I'm the lead developer for Playfinder and BookTech.
And finally, Nick.
Hello, Nick Evans from Imin, who's eating my lunch, so I'm going to go off.
Okay, right. Okay. Let me just share my screen with you for the presentation.
Is Andy representing Debbie today? I'm sorry, I've missed that. Is that Debbie's not making it? Yeah, great.
I wasn't aware Debbie wasn't going to be here, to be honest with you.
Oh right. Oh well.
I don't have sight of a diary, I'm afraid.
No problem. Okay, great.
Good. Sorry, I'm now sharing the wrong windows. Apologies for that. And somebody's just joined the call. Who do we have?
It's me, Tim, Debbie from Everyone.
Oh, hi, Debbie. Hi. Sorry, your name didn't pop up for some reason. So it was just this blank rectangle. Good to have you on the call, Debbie. Sorry, can you just introduce yourself for the sake of the recording?
Yeah, sure. Debbie Giordano, Everyone Active, part of the conversations with Imin and Gladstone, specifically around Westminster and Manchester integration.
Okay, thank you so much, Debbie, and thank you for joining. So yeah, we've had apologies from Matt Davies. He can't join us today, unfortunately. So I'll just jump into the meat of the call. There's the membership proposal. That's what we're all going to be talking about. You should all have a copy of this presentation attached to the meeting invite. So in the previous call, we dealt with the first couple of sections. Section 1 dealing with checking whether a customer account exists and just getting back a number of customer accounts. So we took a look at that section and at the syntax of the API endpoint that does that, and that all seemed to go through without much further comment. And then we looked at creating a new customer account, how that would happen if you were creating a new customer account originally starting from the broker. That was in section 2. And we looked in detail at Appendix A, which is prerequisites to booking, which is really a conversation about terms and conditions. Most of that went through fairly smoothly. There was a clear need to improve the documentation, or rather the structure of the proposal, to clarify exactly what the scope of the terms was, whether we were talking about a persistent customer account or just one particular session. And there was also at the end of the call raised the question of whether safeguarding was something that needed to be dealt with under this head. There will be a call next week for the main W3C group on Wednesday the 24th to take a look at requirements there. So that's what we were up to last call. This call.
Sorry, and a bit of clarity there for Stephen, if he wasn't in the last call, that would be potentially the dependent account conversation, Stephen, in terms of the dependents, as in within a ledger management system, child associated with a parent account, that type of conversation. Might well come up on Wednesday.
Yeah, okay, fine. Yeah, thanks, Nick.
Oh yeah, thanks for clarifying that, Nick. Yeah, the language used needs to be precise there. Thanks. Okay, so on this call, we can move sort of ad hoc through the document, but it's sometimes a little bit hard to align the appendices with the main sections. And this becomes particularly true because of the way the document is structured. We've got pretty much all of the modeling in Appendix C. So a lot of those concerns cross-cut different aspects, different sections. Appendix B is kind of sitting off by itself. So I thought I'd start with Appendix B, which is just really some wireframes indicating the registration flow. But I thought it would be useful to at least ground the conversation to make sure that we were all clear about what we envisage the registration flow as being. And then we can look at sections 3 and section 4, which are the main use cases for the customer accounts: authenticating an existing account and viewing and updating customer account details via the broker. So that's the intended program for discussion. So without further ado, I will take us to, first of all, Appendix B here, which illustrates what the registration flow would be via the broker here. So this is all on the broker end. So when you first register, you've got some tick boxes here indicating discounting and the points at which it would occur. Nick, I assume that what this screen indicates is what happens once you've hit the next button.
Well, so these screens are in different states. One is the kind of before you've linked the accounts kind of state.
Yeah.
The left-hand side is you're registering as a new user for the first time. You want to link your accounts to Better and to everyone active in this example. And obviously these are not standardized screens. There's nothing. This is just purely illustrative. So there's a number of ways these screens can be constructed. Indeed, the MCR screen actually looks slightly different to this. But the idea of it being that you can choose how you link the account, and then later on, the next day maybe, or a couple of minutes later, you can go back to the settings page within your account, which is the right hand side, and the settings page within your account would have something similar, but the difference being that you can unlink, so you can choose to undo the action of registering and connecting your account. So it's linking on the left hand side, if you like, and then unlinking on the right hand side. Right,
potentially. And then this illustrates what the information that you would get if you clicked on one of these icons here.
Yeah, exactly. Just as a kind of illustration that obviously you get access to a number of centers when you do this. Not everyone's going to recognize Better, but they might recognize their local center if they're not sure whether or not to tick the box. And so you might want to do something like this to kind of give them a sense of what Better is in their context. Again, this isn't how MCR do it. This is just an illustration. There's a number of ways you could kind of explain that to the user. And in some councils, it would be more obvious to people what operators are available. In other councils, less obvious.
Okay. Stephen, you're looking thoughtful. I'm not too sure whether that's because you have a comment to make or.
Yeah, just one comment. I'm familiar with these screens because Nick has shared them with me before, so I've reviewed them. But it just occurred to me actually that when the registration process, you've got the two options there: when I book through mcractive.com or when I book at the front desk. Would that just be exclusive to booking at the front desk, or would that include booking via the provider's online service as well? Because technically that could happen, couldn't it?
Yeah, absolutely right. That is exactly the same. It would also be through the provider's front own services, and that the reason that's not in there is because when we were talking about it, I think the original example, that was a preference not to share that information with the user, as in, not to encourage them to use the provider's own service and rather to persuade them to use the broker. But we could add it to the example for clarity, certainly, if that would help make the example more clear.
Yeah, I think it may do. I mean, it might not be applicable in our example, but I just thought I'd call it out.
Yeah, that's great. I'll have a comment.
Okay, sorry, for my own understanding, so there's another possible web portal that you might take, which would be the GLL app. And the suggestion is that you'd have that as another option there. Is that correct?
Well, I suppose it's more what we're doing really by that ticking that second box is we're creating an account inside Better or inside Everyone Active.
Right.
Now, you can access that account through a number of mediums, the app, the website, the front desk, and the Everyone Active app, I mean, the Everyone Active website, the Everyone Active front desk, or the Better app, the Better website, the Better front desk.
Right, okay, yeah.
It's the same account that's being used in all those places. It has the same permissions, same capabilities. This screenshot just chooses to emphasize the front desk.
Oh, okay, so it's about expanding that into, right, okay, yeah. Sorry, I'm with you now. Also, for my own understanding, although this might also be something that should be reflected in the document. So the registration and settings page is probably, in terms of user experience, representing two distinct interactions with the broker application. That you would probably register, then you go away, do something else, and then at some point you might revisit your settings because you wanted to change them or you wanted to refresh your memory or whatever.
Yes.
So I guess it might be useful to indicate what happens when you click on next, because I think we've got some wireframes above that take you through to the mechanics of creating a new account. But we don't have any wireframes for what then happens once you've done that linking. Is it worth expanding that out into a more extended flow?
Yeah. I'll add a comment to that effect, indicating that these wireframes, where these wireframes sit in the sequence of the UX flow, of a hypothetical overall UX flow.
Yeah. But is it worth actually providing that UX flow itself in the document? Maybe not in this particular appendix, but there would be, I don't know, an Appendix E or F that would sequence all of the various wireframes as far as possible, indicating one coherent flow.
Yeah, it's a good question. It's a really good question. Whether we put an illustrative set of wireframes in the spec itself, maybe as a non-normative section, or whether we have a separate guidance that is referenced. I don't know, but yeah, certainly having the content, it makes sense. I don't know whether including in a spec could create a bit of confusion around what is actually spec'd. If you see what I mean, if we put the wireframes in, does that make people? Is that going to create a sense of like this is the only way to do it?
Yeah. My intention was purely that this would be illustrative. But yes, from previous calls in this series, actually, it is very difficult, I think, to avoid grounding the conversation on a very specific instantiation if you've got wireframes. It might be a question of just making them ugly enough. It's
no one would really want to do it like that.
Exactly. If you make it look like a sort of visual basic interface from the early 2000s, it could be that the sort of character is clear.
I bet your legend could.
That's true. Maybe we don't want to open that door.
Burn from Stephen there.
Yeah, maybe some editing necessary before we go online, but okay, so a few sort of minor tweaks to be done there, maybe, and integrate Stephen's suggestions. Okay. On to modeling customer accounts. So this is now we're in schema.org land. Actually, could I get a show of hands, either physical hands or little hand icons from your Zoom interactions menu, of who is familiar with schema.org land? Who has been in schema.org land before? Okay, Nathan has. I know Nick has, because he wrote this. Andy, how familiar are you with schema.org? Is this something you're generally
not all that familiar with? I've got colleagues that have that sort of knowledge.
Right, okay. And Debbie, how familiar are you with this area?
Not at all.
Okay. So, and I think it has to be said that we I don't know if we push schema.org to its limit, but we're certainly a little atypical in the extent to which we use schema.org. I think it's a strength, but it's a very large and baggy set of constructs that kind of model anything you might want to talk about on the web. So I think ultimately schema.org could be used to model pretty much anything in the world. And they're very open to additions to the schema, additions to what kinds of things can be described using schema.org. So it's a big, baggy standard, almost seems like too narrow a term for what schema.org does. But the point is that schema.org provides you with representations, digital representations of lots and lots of things, and is very free in how it allows you to combine them. But also because schema.org is very widely implemented, there's a good chance if you use schema.org that other applications and clients will be able to understand what you're trying to communicate with schema.org. So that's why we've got these little parts here, the schema prefixes, indicating that this is something that's already part of schema.org and something that is more widely supported by, I suppose, the web application community at large. And then this little OA prefix is little bits that OpenActive is adding itself, building upon schema.org for precise modeling of areas that are unique to OpenActive. And this is what a model typically looks like in schema.org. You just get this table of properties of things that can be said about the entity. You get a data type indicating what sort of form it would take. So sometimes it'll be a number, sometimes it will be text, sometimes it will be a web address, and then other times you'll get other schema objects like people and that kind of thing. The modeling for customer account, it seemed to me, I was interested to see how simple customer account was in a way. I guess.
Sorry, Tim, if it's helpful, I don't know if I found this illustration useful when I first started on schema.org. It's like fields in a table in a database. If anyone has worked with fields before, that also might be another way of thinking about it. Everything on the left-hand side is a name of a field. When we talk about the names of the fields, we only use after the colon. So we don't say schema identifier, we just say identifier. Don't say OA account number, we just say account number. And they're the kind of, so in this example, the customer account has all of these different fields. I don't know if that was helpful for anyone. Sorry, Tim, I just thought that was something that I certainly thought was useful when I started.
No, thank you for that. I think more explanations are probably better than fewer. Just trying to think what could be said about the customer account. I think the question that's most vital is probably the one that's hardest to formulate, which is, does this list contain all the information that a system needs to support customer account behaviors? Because it's not a very long list. I suspect a lot of the items people would normally look for are actually found in the person object or the customer object. But are there any obvious missing elements from this list would be the first question, I suppose.
Is it an intentional decision for it to only be people rather than organizations?
Ooh, I'll hand it over to Nick.
Yes, in that it's modeling. I was going to say yes, in that it's modeling a customer account. And I think a customer is a person, but I'm maybe I'm about to be corrected. Let me just check schema. It might actually be both. It's both. Very good question. So actually, schema, the customer could be an organization. I guess the question is whether that's, I suppose, is the use case there a kind of B2B booking where you might be making a booking for a number of maybe an organization is for a corporate, for example, is making a booking for block bookings or squash courts. Is the question therefore, I don't know, Andy or Stephen, or Debbie, about whether in the systems, if you were to make a block booking and put an organization in there, as the booker, do you actually have that in the systems in Legend, Gladstone, Flow?
We've got the capability of doing block bookings, but we wouldn't offer that. Well, we haven't as yet. I don't think we've got any intention that we'd offer that online capability of making a block booking online.
But within the internal data structure, the fields of, you know, the way that you conceptualize it in Gladstone, do you have the idea that a customer could be an organization?
Yes, we have what we call corporate within the system. So
Yeah, we have a
contact.
similar thing.
Yeah, we do as well, Nick. We have corporate sponsors.
That's pretty unanimous answer then. Excellent.
Pretty clear.
I'll go ahead and add that into him so you can carry on. It's brilliant. Good.
Does that create any further complexities if we jump down to?
Can I ask a question about the access pass bit? Just to make sure I'm understanding this, because this is all new to me. So in the notes says the barcode associated with this customer account within their own namespace. Does it have to be a barcode? Could it be something else?
That's a good question. So we on the last call we talked about different ways of describing barcodes, and I think we talked about biometrics and something else. And I think the conversation on that call is that we maybe should take biometrics, or at least out of scope. I think, was that where we got to, Tim?
Yeah, I think we got to barcodes, QR codes, and swipe cards being the only things we'd explicitly support with the specification. Yeah.
Yeah, there was talk that, you know, one of the other ones that we have for some of our customers, not many now, is MagStripe as well.
Yeah.
But basically, it's an identifier. It's a code that's read into the system.
So the definition of a barcode on schema.org is a machine readable code, such as a barcode or QR code. So the format in which that's read doesn't have to be visual. And I don't believe there are any restrictions on that.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, in which case then that's fine.
Yeah, because I think we talked about also what we call sort of smart card RFID.
Yeah.
Again, that's just a code, so it would fall into that banner.
Yeah, I think the agreement was that we would use schema barcode as the modeling decision. We'd use the term access pass to refer to what barcode enables, or is the kind of generic version of barcode. And then the examples given, or the examples of what was covered by access pass were just barcode, QR code, and swipe card. With biometrics not being canvassed and RFID not being mentioned explicitly.
Somebody's got a lot of background noise.
So that's me.
Okay.
So maybe to clarify that, then, what are we? Is it worth us? So it sounds like we're saying that barcode is the correct schema term for the description, for the sake of clarity. Should we put barcodes, QR codes, or swipe cards instead of barcodes? Is that helpful?
Yeah, I think that would be a helpful clarification just to stop this discussion happening again.
Yeah, I think ultimately we put a big definitions section somewhere near the head of the document to make it clear, but yeah.
Yeah.
And sorry, this is a very naive question, but is MagStripe the same thing as swipe card?
Oh, sorry, fighting with the mute button. It's basically, if you were to look at a bank card, that sort of thing, that is a MagStripe. But MagStripes can actually be encoded with just an ID, as if it were a RFID or whether it would be a barcode. It just contains a code.
So do we need to account for that separately to swipe card, or does the swipe card cover that?
Well, I don't think it's in scope with regards to what Greenwich are using and what everyone active would be using. But if we're thinking outside the box, for other customers, it's a consideration within this forum that it's a valid method of identification if they were issued.
So what would be? Is it MagStripe? Sorry,
magnetic stripe. Yep.
So is that now? Are we happy with this wording then? Oh, I just blocked it out there. So barcode, QR code, magnetic stripe, or swipe card.
I mean, did you want to mention their RFID as well? Like we talked about in the last one, you know, some of our customers have these wristbands that have got a chip inside them, and that just contains a code.
That is interesting. RFID.
Maybe we should make the definition more generic rather than more specific, and just say any method
static
in
code,
which a
basically.
machine identifies a customer.
Yeah.
Okay. More inclusive.
It is more inclusive.
Because, for example, we've got cases where customers get access through PIN entry.
Mm-hmm.
And is that the only mechanism that they need? So they don't need anything else. As long as they've got the PIN, they can just do it.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. Okay. I'm just thinking functionally in terms of what that entails. Because the interaction mode is a little bit different, I guess, for barcodes, QR codes, magnetic stripes, and swipe cards. In all of those, you've got some kind of reader and some kind of device. And when that device is brought into some kind of contact with the reader, you go through. So in a way, that seems quite generic. Same thing with RFIDs, right? That it's the model is exactly the same. It's just the particular technological instantiation is different. PIN, could that conceivably be different? I mean, might the same PIN be issued to a number of different clients at the same time?
I mean, it's possible, but I would assume not. I guess if we're talking about security terms, the main difference between a PIN and something like a barcode is there's a difference between something you know and something you have.
Mm-hmm.
So in kind of like two-factor terminology, the second factor would be the actual physical device, be it a phone or a card. And then the knowledge would be the PIN code. So technically, a PIN code is not quite two-factor.
There's we have already answered that. I felt it's a tinge of deja vu when we were talking about this. We've talked. This is actually already covered by the actual booking spec itself. There's a distinction between access code, access pass, and access channel. And access pass is a thing that you have, and access code is a thing that you know.
So maybe we should allow potentially either of those.
I was going to say, with regards to access pass, if that's intended to store the credentials that will be used to gain access, you would need to pass the PIN into that. Otherwise, how would the booking system or the access system know that this is the person that's registered? There's got to be a correlation between the two systems, surely. Something you pass to the broker.
A PIN alone.
Stored within the seller.
I wonder whether with this situation, a PIN is slightly different, because isn't a PIN about access usually related to a ticket rather than to a person? Or maybe you're going to say that's not always the case, Nathan.
It's not always the case.
So people have a unique code that only works for them.
Yeah, we're currently installing a PIN entry system at a venue, and their intention is to have memberships where a member is given a PIN that cycles every month or something to update their access to the venue, but that PIN is always active.
Very interesting. That slightly scuppers the yeah, that's interesting. I suppose the question there is, do we include code as a type of pass, and then we don't need two properties, which is inconsistent.
Aren't there also a number of requirements about the prefixing of the access pass, which with a PIN would not really be relevant?
That's true, 100% true. Yeah, that's right. The namespacing. How do you namespace a PIN number? I guess you start with 00 and 01, etc.
Yeah.
Well, I guess that is the answer, isn't it? you have less than 10,000 or whatever members, and then you put a 01 in front and have a 6-digit PIN.
Yeah.
So sorry, where are we here? I feel like we need to add access code as a separate possible array.
Yeah, it does seem that way, but that does slightly mess up some other stuff. So maybe should we, for now, should we just note this as a thing that we need to add, and then figure out later how we might do that? Because I don't know.
Yeah, I think that's sensible.
Yeah. Okay. Do that.
Well, what's worrying was I thought that was going to be relatively easy. It was actually has hidden entitlements was where I was thinking the complexity was going to boil over. Well, basically, I don't really understand the use case for this.
So I can explain this one. So
thank you.
No problem. So the basic thing here is that there are two modes this membership stuff works in. One is that the entitlement that you've got on the user account, the entitlement you've got is related to the broker. It's only that broker that you have an entitlement for, and there's a percentage of users this will be true for, generally pay and play users in a local authority, or users that only came via the broker and haven't used, got a monthly membership. So those users that come through the broker are assigned an entitlement by the broker, and they never get an additional entitlement given to them through any other means. So the broker knows everything about them. The great thing about this category of customer, is that we can be very specific about the pricing they're going to receive in the browse stage, because we know that they've got that one entitlement. Let's say that they're a junior resident. We know they're a junior resident, therefore we can pick the junior resident price out of the feed, present that to them at the browse stage, and then they can get a complete end-to-end experience with that price being accurate all the way through to when they make the booking, because it's very simple that they've got one entitlement, that entitlement has a price, therefore that's the price they get. As we know from membership systems, all manner of magic is involved in the background when there is more than one entitlement. So you might have, a monthly membership, you might have several other entitlements related to different things within that account. If you've got other entitlements, the where this proposal suggests that we limit the abstraction is that we don't worry about what those other entitlements are. There might be a monthly membership, goodness knows what they could be. It doesn't really matter what they are, because what it does mean is the price at the browse stage is no longer accurate. So we can only give an indicative price at the browse stage, which says that it's something like this price, 33% off, for example. But you might have it might be completely free because you actually pay monthly. And so what hidden entitlements allows us to do is put a little asterisk against the pricing in the browsing, so they know what they're going to get in terms of whether that price is accurate or not. And then we know when dealing with pricing generally how to reason about that in the front end. And so and what this means is, let's say that the customer account has a monthly membership on it. The detail of that monthly membership is not exposed to the broker, so the broker won't know that they've got, like, whatever it is, £15 a month something or other that gives them whatever it gives them. And the idea there is that that information, might well be interesting, but if they've got that kind of membership, they probably are interacting with the booking system directly. They're probably making bookings through the booking system primarily, and if they want to manage their membership, they probably need to go into the booking system directly and do that, amend their direct debits, things like that. And we're not going to surface the complexity of all of those different membership types and all the implications of those and whatever else, and even the names of them, because they might not be human readable, or they might not make sense in different contexts in the broker. So this is the simplest kind of approach there that meets those requirements.
Okay, this raises for me two questions, one of which is hopefully simple to deal with. I guess the difficulty with indicative pricing, I think everyone's going to be happy if that price goes down at the end. Are there situations in which it might go up?
It's a good question. It's unlikely to go up, I believe, but someone else might say something different, because if you've got an entitlement, let's say you've got a 30% off from Manchester entitlement, and you have another entitlement that maybe gets you 15% off, the customer is usually given the lower price of both entitlements, rather than paying £15 a month, that then means that you're no longer eligible for the 30% type thing.
Yeah, I can't think of any example where we would display a headline price and the customer would pay more, other than a configuration error.
Is it, sorry, quite a lot of drilling. Is this something that it would be worth a broker and booking system agreeing out of band, or can we just pass over because of the rarity of the eventuality? We just don't have to think about this any further.
When you say out of band, what are we thinking there specifically?
Well, what I'm thinking of, so supposing you had an example like you indicated, so you get 30% off via, say, MCR Active, and you've got a customer account that gives you a reduced price of 15%. So it seems like the booking system is going to be responding with a price potentially which is incorrect from the broker's point of view. Do you need to have some kind of agreement in place that says, if we've got these two different offers available to us, the lower one will be how it resolves? Like, is there some need to have that formalized somewhere, or can that just be assumed?
That can be assumed because the booking system handles that.
Yeah, because the thing is, and I'm just thinking about from first principles here, if a booking system didn't work like that, the way you as a customer, the way you get around that is you just have two accounts, right? You'd have the account that gave you the better price and book stuff on one, and you have another account, the other one, and book stuff on the other. So you're not all we're doing there is forcing the customer to do something a bit more complex to get the same better pricing, rather than so I don't know why. I'm trying to think of a rationale for why entitlement would not, why you wouldn't just give the customer the best price that they're eligible for. Similarly, if you go on Amazon and you apply a discount code and you apply a promotion code at the same time, you're likely to get the lowest of those.
Okay, well, that's a widely understood sort of principle and unlikely to arise in practice anyway, then. Yeah, that's fine. The other question I've got is actually just a naming convention. So hidden entitlements seems like a kind of curious way of phrasing that, because it really sort of has booking system or entitlements. Like, it feels like this is hidden from the broker in a sense.
Yes, that's exactly it. It
right.
was, yeah, it came from that, exactly, it being hidden from the broker. But obviously, yeah, we can make it more, if there's a clearer way of saying the same, or yeah, different.
I guess maybe I'd open this up to other people on the call as to whether that seems intuitive to everyone else, because they're actually closer to the booking systems than I am, certainly.
I guess from my perspective, surely the price would just change during a booking process. So there's no real other way to model that. Just after you've done C1 or after you've done C2, you'd get a different required total price than the one that you've sent, which would kind of indicate that you need to notify the customer or just issue a refund and continue.
Well, would you? Because everything we've had discussions, I think, with Nick, is that what we should be showing for the open data is the actual price they'd be paying, not that it'll be changing within the process with the user flow.
But I think this is trying to handle cases where customers have special rules. For example, if they've got credit or something that you can't really show on a feed.
So, sorry, no, you're right. It's not about credit as much as it's about they have another entitlement on their account that gives them a different discount to the one that's exposed. So the use case being that if the entitlement that's exposed to the broker is 15% off entitlement, but they've got a 30% off entitlement that's not exposed, so it's being added to the account by someone who's not the broker somewhere else somehow, then the price that the price you get at C1, sorry, at C2 will be the price of a lower amount, because we know who they are and we're giving them the lowest price of the ones that they've got available. But as a broker, we won't know that until they get to C2. So in the open feed, we won't know that the prices that they're seeing in the feed.
What's the user case of that then, Nick? Because I'm confused based on the conversation we had with Debbie the other day.
So the
user case, Andy, is if somebody's got a prepaid membership. If somebody's got a prepaid membership on top of a Manchester Active card, we're already displaying the Manchester Active offers. That's in an example, and they will get through to the booking point, and the booking point is going to say, "Well, you get this for free because of the configuration."
Okay.
Which is a genuine case. Is going to happen, isn't it? If we've got people that are registering from Manchester Active, but they've got a direct debit or an annual membership as well with everyone active, they're entitled to that activity for free.
But that's not the price level. That's not the level of pricing that's been passed through the open data source from the outset.
Mm-hmm.
Is that like that junior one we were talking about the other day in the call with Nick?
No, that's slightly different, because the junior one that we're talking about, we can declare that as part of the offers. You wouldn't be declaring a prepaid membership as part of the offers.
Okay.
So I guess it's just what order things happen in, isn't it? Like, as long as we're not taking any payment before we realise it's free, for example, because you don't want to have to take payment, then go down the route of actually we've made a mistake and realise that you don't have to pay. I don't fully understand the order of the things that happen in this solution to make sure that the booking is made for the individual and it's at a zero cost if they're entitled to a zero cost.
Yeah, so I can answer that. So the booking spec does suggest that the payment is taken after the C2 call. So we will.
Would be zero.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. Okay. All right, thanks, guys.
Does that help, Nathan?
Yeah, that makes perfect sense.
Although I suppose in the case that Nathan raised, which was there's credit, I suppose equally that's sort of just something that gets handled by the booking system.
Well, in fact, credit is the outstanding action. This is the next property.
Right. Okay.
List. So we might actually cover that in a sec, I guess, if we're going through them.
Okay. Well, I'm just gonna rewind to the original sort of terminology point that I was asking about, which was I find has hidden entitlements kind of strange, because it's hidden from the broker. But if I were a booking system implementer, I wouldn't think, well, these are hidden. It's like, actually, they're the ones I've got clearest sight of. If I'm looking at it from a booking system point of view. So I was just going to actually ask, Gladstone and everyone active people, whether hidden entitlements is a name that makes sense for them, or whether there would be something that would be more intuitive, or whether it doesn't really matter what we call it in this case.
Personally, I don't think it really matters from a Gladstone perspective, as long as we've got a clear understanding with regards to what the intention of the parameter is, which I think we've just gone through.
Okay, cool. Happy to carry on then. Yeah, indeed, to outstanding action. I'm surprised to see actions actually making an appearance here, because the modeling on schema action is on its own terms quite difficult. Nick, is it just essentially that you feel like you've found a narrow enough profile of schema actions that makes them usable?
Yeah, it's a great point. Schema actions are fun. They're actually used in a few places here, so in this case, the reason for them suggesting to be used here is that they're, let me just find the actual example where there's a this is kind of modeling the potential action field, which exists in all schema things. Potential action is kind of available actions that could be displayed to the customer to to do something. And the example that they use in Schema is, you want to be able to play music, or do things like that. You want to do a thing with the music you're looking at, so press play. And the analogy here is to resolve a problem, to resolve an action, you want to do that thing. So like play music, resolve the action is the kind of analogy. So it's using the exact same modeling as potential action uses to kind of surface links that you can use to play the music or to do the whatever. It's just that these links in this case would link through to, for example, in the case of an unpaid debt, as an example, a different place in the document, that you would have an action that says there's an unpaid debt on your account. You can click here and then you go to the Legend login or the Gladstone login, and you can then pay that debt. So there's an action that the user can take that gives them clear directions to where they need to go to fix the problem, because until the problem's fixed, they're not going to be able to make any bookings.
Right. Okay. So I just want to jump down to, where are we here? So here we've got the evidence request action, the resolve action, and the unblock action.
It's resolve and unblock. They're the two, yeah.
Right. And then we've also got another action down here. So in terms of the resolve action and unblock action, this basically boils down to a URL and a message to the user, with some restrictions on how the URL is formed.
If you click on my face a second, it might take you to where or it might not at all. Try again.
Okay.
So this might be a good just illustrate. And if you double click on the page gap between the two pages, that will also shrink the. Yeah, perfect. So this might be a good illustrative example of what we're talking about here. So you've got the unblock action you can see in both cases there. So it's an unblock action. There is an unpaid debt on your account. You must log into your account to pay this debt. The place you need to go to do that is this URL. So you go to the Legend Online Services in this case, and you log in and you solve the problem. So that's the kind of proposed form. It's really just a prompt that's kind of clear and descriptive, so they know what the problem is from MCR or wherever they are, whatever broker they're in, and a place they can go from there.
Yes, and the difference between that and resolve action is that resolve action in this example does not have a URL associated with it, but from the spec, it could do.
It could do, that's right. So in this case, the resolve action, I mean, I think Everyone Active actually have a URL for the gym induction. It's online, I believe, so they could put that in there. The resolve action is the difference between the resolve action and an unblock action, which might be useful to go back to the table actually, because that's where it's written.
I think the difficulty we'll have, Nick, is with the gym example, that's a restriction. So that's part of the activity or the booking element feed.
Mm-hmm.
But the resolve is not specific. So as far as MRM is concerned, it doesn't know that's what you need to do exactly. It can't say you have to do a gym induction, because all it's seeing is a subscription type restriction, and that subscription type restriction could be relevant to anything.
Oh, I see. Yes. So yes, it's a great point. So these actions aren't at the booking level; they're at the account level. So if you imagine if you went into the kind of settings page or the My Account page or something on MCR, for example, a broker, there would be these actions are listed somewhere in there as kind of actions to attend, that require your attention.
Yeah, but what I'm saying is the database doesn't necessarily know that the customer's got to take action for an induction. It's not that specific.
Oh,
and it only knows you need to take action for an induction at the point you try and make a booking.
But you may know whether the customer has or hasn't completed the induction already.
We may know, but
Not
if
through
they
the
don't
feed.
want to use the gym, it's irrelevant.
It's irrelevant. Yes. So well, that's a good point. So at the moment, the way this is set up is that the resolve action would be always visible to the user. So they would have a message saying you're not able to book gym until you complete your gym induction. I guess if they didn't want to book gym, maybe they wouldn't do anything about that message. And that's the idea between the difference between the unblock action and the resolve action is the unblock action is like a I think it says that is reserved for actions that are required to make any booking. So an unblock action is like you've got debt on your account. This is like a serious issue that must be resolved because you're not able to do anything otherwise. The resolve action is to make specific bookings. So the resolve action example of a gym induction or a climbing induction or whatever it is would be there as a kind of, you can do it if you want, but it would be displayed to the user like that, not a urgent, must fix, but rather like a, did you know you could do a gym induction and go to the gym if you want to do that? It was the idea of this.
Yeah, I'm just struggling to figure out how you would put that into the feed, Andy. I don't know if you're getting to the same point.
This is nothing to do with the feed. What we're doing in the feed, as we've discussed previously, is that because of the complexity of, as you're rightly saying, there is a restriction, but it's not exposed what the restriction is because the amount of logic around the system and the various scenarios, we're just basically passing it a generic message that's configurable within the data manager that indicates through the feed that you need to contact, and it's a generic message that can go in there. So Nick, where are we at this point? This is on the registration point of creating an account?
Yeah, this is after you've logged in. You know who the user is. We've got the information about the account.
Sorry, I want to be clear. When you log into the portal, the broker's portal.
When we've logged into the broker portal and have connected an account so that you've got a linked account with Everyone Active. So we know exactly which customer it is to Everyone Active.
So are you saying to me that resolve action, let's say unpaid sales, is going to appear to everybody regardless of whether they're going to have an unpaid sale or not?
No. It's if in the booking system there is an issue like an unpaid sale, then it displays the action. So the action is only outputted in this API call result for that particular person.
But we can't do a resolve action for a gym induction in that example. It's not an issue as far as the system's actually an unpaid debt, an office message, anything that might prevent entry is considered an action to resolve. But doing a gym induction is not considered an action to resolve.
So the top one there is it sounds like office entry. So great. What is that use case? Just write that in. Sounds like a good one. What is the office entry one?
Well, it depends on how the leisure operator system works, but MRM works in a way that you can say if somebody's got unpaid debt, we're going to prevent them access. If somebody's got an office message on their account, we're going to prevent them access. And those office messages have been added for a reason by a colleague. Right. That person might be abusive or I don't know.
Yeah, that's just an example, Nick, of some form of restriction. That's not the be and the end all. There's lots of different permutations. You can use various messaging.
Yeah,
it can be a reception message and so on. So we need to be careful. Any scenarios we put in here, that's not the be and the end all. And I'm not saying we need to put an exhaustive list on here, but I'm not sure a one fit model works. It's the level of detail that's potentially being passed to how we map what it is we show.
Yeah, understood. Well, so just back a second on the point that Debbie raised there around the difference between unblock action and resolve action. So if the unblock action, which is the top one, is for that office message or outstanding debt scenario where you can't make any booking, and that's the thing to resolve. It sounds like we're saying that on its own we think makes sense, that works just at a high level. Debbie, is that right?
Well, I guess somewhere because you're telling me it is person specific, so somewhere in the response that you get for that individual, we've got to tell you whether there's some sort of restriction on their account or not. But how do we map those restrictions? And things like gym inductions are not restrictions, so that's not going to be an example to use.
Sure. So taking gem injections and resolve action aside and just focusing on this one. So if we get that nailed down, maybe unresolved action, then at the moment, the 2 bits of information here are a free text description and a URL. So do you think that for all cases where you've got an office message, outstanding debt or something, is there a free text description that's meaningful to the user, that's kind of available to just display for all those cases?
I don't think that exists in the Gladstone world at the moment. There'd have to be an interpretation.
Yeah, and we'd have to probably map that outside of our current product suite. So that's probably something in the data manager then.
Oh, I see. So is it right? So, well, I mean, is it? I don't know if in the legend system there's like 3 different specific examples where that need text applied. But is it? Do you think it's the case here that you would need custom messaging for each potential operator? For example, the outstanding debt message. Does the outstanding debt message need to change for every operator?
When you say every operator, what do you mean? Sorry, do you mean
a user?
No, I mean between everyone active and someone else that might use Gladstone. Does it need to be configurable in Data Manager, I guess I'm asking, or is it something that is just a message that can be kind of written once?
Well, the thing is, we need to bear this in mind. Debbie, you know that within Connect, as an example, there is a form of messaging we can show depending on various scenarios. It sounds like something similar we need to do here for this integration as well. Now, whether that's within the GMC, I don't know, or whether that's within the Data Manager, because that's the one thing that sits between this integration.
Yeah, but the messaging that's in Connect is not configurable. From our perspective, they're all in XML files. So, I mean, they're in XML files, so they are configurable, but they're not, if you know what I mean, not without yourselves or us knowing what we're doing, going in and changing it.
Connect may be a wrong example, but I know there are areas within GMC you can actually change the messaging if necessary in certain scenarios. So I'm sort of thinking of that model.
Yeah, that's for the app, I think, and it's only for some of them. But yeah, you're going to need an interpretation tool, I think, at some point. But it's how you establish what those restrictions are for those individuals and spit them out is the challenge, I think, isn't it?
I think so, because that's a lot of logic that we're doing. It's not as if it's in a static state that this is the person, this is what you're going to show. It can change.
Yeah. So the way that so in the legend example, it's a kind of the logic is something like, if there is an unresolved debt, then display the message about unresolved debt. If there is, you see what I mean, like that, like for each one.
There's lots of scenarios. I mean, I know you're drawing to what Legend is doing at the moment, but there's lots of different scenarios. I'm sure they've got other scenarios as well. It could be unpaid debt. It could be the fact that they're trying to book something outside the permitted hours as well. There's a potential you could actually block someone from actually making the booking rather than getting it at a different price. There's lots of scenarios, Nick, from an operations perspective. I think we need to look through this and look at the permutation. It's whether we can get that specific messaging out exposed to the broker.
Understood. Okay, well, that sounds like a good thing to, it's only going to be those messages that are specific to the account rather than a particular booking. So days and times and things like that. It would, I guess it would only be things like, unpaid debt or blocking on the account. So, but if that's a big list, then maybe there's a generic message that says something else is wrong. Give
us an opportunity to catch up with Debbie on this particular one,
cool.
And we'll take it from there. I'm really sorry, I've got another appointment I've got to jump onto now, so I'm going to have to drop off, I'm afraid. Debbie, I'll catch up with you a little later on.
Okay.
Thanks, Andy.
Thank you very much.
Thanks all. Bye.
Okay, I think what I'm left unclear on from that conversation, while I'm starting to get a sense of the complexity, is whether it's feasible to resolve everything that might be output from that configuration of the data manager. Will it be possible to ultimately resolve all of that down to essentially a free text description and a URL, possibly? Or are there sometimes going to be more complicated models that need to be catered for? Like, what is it?
I think the free text description and the URL is acceptable. But in the majority of cases, we'd have to accept that is going to be your account's blocked, you're going to have to contact us.
Right.
Do
Okay.
something about it.
Yeah.
Yeah. Not
Yeah.
everything is going to be resolvable online.
Yes.
Right. Okay. Yeah. So I guess maybe this is another guidance point. Maybe it's worth adding to the guidance saying, the URL is supplied, possibly to resolve the issue or for more information, or is optional because not all issues can be resolved in this way, or whatever, just to clarify that that's, we're looking at a very thin kind of informational function for this particular action.
In fact, we've actually already got that note in here. I just realized it says at the bottom of the, if you scroll down slightly there, Tim, yeah, where my highlighting is, just at the top of your screen. Yeah. Yes,
right.
So note, this is not required for circumstances where resolution cannot be completed digitally. So that might cover the scenario that Debbie's there talking about. Is that sufficient there, do you think, Debbie? Or
This is not required for system. I mean, is that right? The fact that the customer can't book, we should still tell them they can't book and tell them what they need to do, regardless of whether that is online or not.
Oh, sorry, this is only not required, is only applicable for the URL link for the thing, the kind of.
Oh, I see. Okay. Yeah. Yes. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Okay. My point of confusion is actually the paragraph above. So it's an entry point that contains only the URL template. An entry point that contains only the URL template property must reference the URL where the issue can be resolved. Other entry points may be provided to include platform-specific findings as outlined here and here. Okay, I guess.
Oh, so I can explain what those are. This might be a feature we don't use, but those bindings allow you to link straight into an app, for example, an iOS app or an Android app.
Right. Okay.
If it was useful to, let's say that you have an app with GLL, you might want to link straight into that app rather than through the website if the app offers you a quicker journey to pay off debt.
Right. Okay. Yeah. Okay, with you now. Okay, so that is the unblock action, I suppose. Well, just a small point about the language, actually. So I find this phrasing a little bit strange. The mixture of should and incontestably, I think, is a little bit.
I don't know where incontestably came from. That's a brilliant word. Incontestably in a spec.
Yeah, I was just thinking, yeah, at the very least, that's a must. Yeah, I think we should take that out. Yeah.
Take it out, just delete it. Yeah. It's where of these is sufficient, do you think? Just delete that sentence, that word.
I think so, yeah, because just incontestably made me think like, oh, this is really important. Therefore, this should be a must. And yeah, there needs to be some more language around it. But if it's just that, yeah, obviously,
yes,
we would recommend that this be done for user experience reasons.
Sure.
Yeah, very, very minor point. I was just sort of, I guess it's because it's so close to standards language. It made me think like, oh, what am I missing here? But
yeah. That's very good. One last point on this, Tim, before we move on, we're going to just on Debbie's point about resolve action. I know we didn't really come back to that, but the resolve action, which is, we've already talked about unblock action. It seems that we've agreed in terms of the description, and as Debbie said, it might just be as simple as it's blocked, please call us, here's the number or something. For the resolve action, that's one for the gym induction scenario. So the difference there is that it's basically on the customer account for any action that they can take that might be a benefit to them. So that could be going on a gym induction. It could be doing an online, health and wellness video. It could be all sorts of stuff. Any kind of fun thing that they might want to do that is not a major blocker, like the block action, which is like, must do this to continue to make bookings. Resolve action is a kind of more of a, you might want to think about this. This is available to you type thing. I don't know if that's helpful for Does that make sense, Debbie? For just for gym inductions, not making it a big blocker thing, but like a little bit of a lesser, less serious, I suppose, action.
It makes sense. There's obviously work that's got to be done because unblock is based on something that's actually in the database, and resolve action is not based on something that's in the database necessarily. It's just going to be, we're just going to need an interface to say we want to present every customer with this action, regardless of who they are. I'm not sure whether resolve is the right word, if I'm honest. Unblock action makes sense because there's a block on your account. But resolve action also implies that, to me, that there's some sort of block on the account, like resolve the issue. When actually we're saying these are not necessarily issues; they are recommendations.
That's right. I don't know. Within Legend, we know whether each customer has attended a gym induction or not. Is that not the case in Flow? Do we have a mark against the account?
Yeah. They're not even. They're prerequisites, aren't they? There's something you have to. There's something you have to do in order to then complete the action, which is to book a gym session. You can't book a gym session unless you've done a gym induction. But not everybody has to do a gym induction, because you only do a gym induction if you want to use the gym.
But I guess we're not going to go down the route of writing something as specific as saying, if you haven't got this subscription type, we're assuming you've not done a gym induction, therefore we're going to spit that out as a recommended action for you to do. That is really specific.
Oh, sorry, are you saying there, Debbie, that if they don't have access to the gym through their subscription, then it won't be relevant to them? Is that what you mean? Or maybe I'm missing that.
An induction in the Gladstone world, somebody's done an induction, it is a subscription.
Oh.
So you've got to get right down to that level, and you've got to somehow write code that says, what is this specific recommendation? Does it exist on that account, and what am I looking for on that account to know whether it exists or not? And then what's the output? And those are really, really specific instances.
So am I right in thinking that every partnership or site has a separate sub that's for each type of induction?
Yeah.
Wow, I see.
Yeah.
So you're going to be a whole mapping between subs and descriptions.
And that's assumed, and that would only work in the cases where it is a subscription. There could be lots of other things that you want to resolve or do as part of this that are not necessarily subscriptions. So you're trying to build something that is essentially running queries against your database for that specific example, which is it. I don't feel like that's necessary, if I'm honest. I think you possibly just looking at something in an admin interface that says, I would also like to present this message to everybody that logs in.
Yeah, you could just have a message that's static that just says gym induction is required to make a gym booking, and then it would always be displayed, rather than doing it and having subs that, I guess, to hide. It sounds like the subs would hide the message. So if it was anything, it would be a configuration of a list of subs that hide the message.
Yeah, but we can't always say it's subs because it's not always subs. So that's what I'm.
Could be other things.
Subs is for inductions, and that's a specific case we're talking about. But there might be other cases of things where it's not a subscription. So then you are specifically looking at a certain query for that database for that individual, and it just feels really, really niche.
You don't want to create a whole. Well, yeah, I mean, the gym induction sounds like the main use case here, or some type of prerequisite, as Stephen was saying. So do you think we should either rename this to prerequisite action or something to make it more specific, or just, I suppose, keep it generic and bear in mind that different implementers will put different levels of information in here? Yeah,
I think it's something like a recommended action or advisory action.
Yeah.
Unless anybody disagrees, I don't know. That's how I see it. Is there anything we want to present?
I wouldn't necessarily agree with that, Debbie, because it is a prerequisite. You can't do that. You can't book the gym without doing it. So it's not advisory.
I mean, are we really talking about needing 3 separate actions?
I think we might be, yeah.
Yeah.
Oh.
So an example that I can give is with paddle tennis. They recommend that you do kind of like a paddle tennis induction, but it's not required to actually make a booking. They just kind of suggest that you do that, especially if you've not played it before.
Yeah, that's recommended. Yeah, in that example.
So are we actually looking at some kind of recommended and prerequisite?
Yeah.
This
Yeah.
kind of language. So is that?
Yeah, so unblock is scoped to the entire account. Prerequisite is to a particular session and is an absolute bar, and then recommended is just informational. Is that other people's perspective?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So which are informational. And what about this generally useful for the upkeep of the account? And by that I mean it might be. I'm not suggesting that implementers need to do this, but for example, sometimes you send a message every so often that says, "Can you check that your phone number is still up to date?" Or I don't know, whatever it is. Maybe phone number is a bad example because the broker is going to be doing that. But you know, can you come in and I don't know, get a new, refresh your key card, or I don't, you know, what some random message that goes out that's kind of an upkeep on the account type thing. Just, I mean, without being a prerequisite for activities. Maybe I don't know,
We're cutting off all the locks tonight or something. Yeah.
Yeah, so exactly, something that exactly. Like everyone's being given a new key card, so please come and collect your new one to continue to access stuff. Would that fall into unblock, prerequisite, or recommended action? I guess is what I'm wondering. Have we made these too narrow now?
Well, I mean, that just feels recommended. Like that seems like it would fit under the recommended action. I mean, the naming is a little weird in that case. No, recommended action. Yeah, it's not a prerequisite for anything. If you just dismiss the message and don't do anything, it's fine.
Your key card might stop working, but so what, kind of thing. Yeah.
Yeah, and
Well,
I would
actually, so
assume
what, you can't get into your room then, can you? So therefore, it is a blockage in that example.
Yeah. Oh, are you saying that
it would change status, wouldn't it? In that case, there would be 2 weeks where it was recommended, and then there'd be a week where it was a day when it would suddenly become a prerequisite
or an unblock. Oh, I see.
Yeah. Or yeah.
Okay, so we're happy with these 3 categories as covering those cases then.
And these are all optional.
Yeah. So yeah, it's whatever's useful to display to the customer to make sure that they have a good user experience. But there's no But I mean,
I guess I mean optional from a standards perspective.
Oh yeah. Yeah. Well, yeah. I mean, there's the requirements of kind of whatever MCR Active and Westminster have in terms of for that case, but the whole standard is optional.
Yeah, not necessarily.
Yeah, these are all. I feel like these are all obviously recommendations, but we don't want to be imposing musts in this kind of domain. But it feels like it would be very hard to imagine a situation where people wouldn't naturally apply things in this way. In terms of user flow, anyway.
Okay, so just removing this. Then are we happy with those words? The broker should make these known. Should make these known. I mean, we might as well use the same language, right? In all cases, the broker should make these known to the customer.
Yeah.
Does that work for everyone?
Yeah.
Right. Debbie? Is that definitely all good? Okay.
Yeah, I'm just concerned about the like I was saying before, the example of the gym induction and how we would possibly cater for all the prerequisite actions and put that into the feed for that individual.
Well, it might well be that you look at the analysis of that and just say, well, look, is it the case that actually the major actions that you care about displaying to the individual are all in subs, and therefore you just need to kind of hide on sub functionality, and that kind of does the job? Doesn't, that covers 99% of cases because they're mostly gym inductions that anyone really cares about. I don't know. I don't know, you obviously don't know the data set. But.
Yeah, I thinking outside of us, like the Gladstone solution is not just relevant to us, and to start writing specific scenarios around gym inductions and certain subscriptions. Those subscriptions are only going to be specific to everyone active, and they won't be specific to the next client of Gladstone. So it's tricky, isn't it?
I was thinking kind of you put the sub IDs in the XML file or something, you know, along with the description, and then, but I have no idea. I'm just making it up. something like quite light, but also flexible, you know.
Well, I think, yeah, so we're into implementation territory now.
Yeah, right.
Those are deep waters.
Good conversation to pick up some other place if that's helpful. Yeah, of course.
Oh yeah, definitely. I mean, that's what the implementation forum, I think, which is sort of dormant right now, but I think that's the right place for those kinds of more detailed, interesting conversations. I think we don't have very long left on the call. I'll just wheel us back up to the remainder of the customer account model, because there was one line left, which was entitlement. What is the modeling for entitlement? Is that just a URL, Nick?
No, it's a model. It's a thing. It's in C6.
Okay.
Yeah.
Oh, okay, right. Yeah, sorry. We got the entitlement type hierarchy here, right? And then we've got another action down here. Oh, okay, right. Actually, sorry, I just opened up another box of complexity there. I think I've got a sort of, again, terminology query about it, because I think entitlement we were going to abandon in favor of applicable offers, but actually in this context that doesn't really quite do it.
I think we were saying that applicable offers was the generic term, and that this is the specific term that we would use for this type of entitlement, which is a specific thing. Because the entitlements is a particular type of applicable offer.
Right. Well, it's a class that entitles you to particular offers, isn't it? Yeah.
Yes.
Right. So, yeah, applicable offers are pointed to by entitlements. Then is that the kind of
entitlements entitle you to
the applicable offers, to the set of applicable offers, right?
The applicable offers, yeah. Right. I think if that was to kind of Matt's point on applicable offers, there could be a number of ways of figuring out how offers are applicable, claims, whatever. Mm-hmm. Entitlements are one way of that.
Yeah, I've got a terminology kind of query that I think we should probably just pick up on Slack there then, because. Mm-hmm. Yeah, entitlement still feels like a curious way of designating that, but now is with 6 minutes left on the call, now is not the time to pick that up. And this is generally speaking something for the next call, I guess, is the entitlement complex object. And I think probably also we can't jump into person.
Well, we could quickly signpost people to the person. So in terms of these are the fields that are the ones that the broker can capture that are then provided through to the booking system. So it might be just a thing to note here. You've obviously got a list, which is email, given name, family name, telephone, date of birth, gender. Carry on going down there, Tim. Address and emergency contact as the minimum. Note that the ethnicity is not included because that's GDPR special category data, and that's out of scope as the requirements currently stand, because all world of additional GDPR fun if we did include that. But apart from that, does that sound like a good list of core fields that would be used?
I think from a Gladstone perspective, you can't have gender without title. The two are associated to each other as it stands in the database. So we wouldn't be able to just specify somebody's gender without specifying their title.
So the way we've solved this in the legend system, after some conversations, some fairly lengthy conversations actually, which I guess we've got 5 minutes. I could try and surface a summary of. Basically, the idea of title being quite an outdated idea in terms of, you know, capturing title and thinking about forms that you might come across when you're filling in forms for various things now. Title isn't really used as much, and even gender itself is obviously contentious as a binary set of options. And so trying not to embed in the standards kind of older approaches to things, and trying to make this kind of as relevant as applicable as possible. The suggestion here on gender specifically was to allow for 3 options: male, female, and effectively a free text other for any other type of gender that people might want to include. And databases can do what they will. And within the legend system, male is mapped to Mr. and female is mapped to MS in the title, as in just MS. And then the gender of the other option is MX. And they're the 3 titles that are then used to get around. So we don't know the difference between Miss and Mrs., for example. But the idea there was that wasn't as useful these days, because, you know, the title is.
Yeah, I don't disagree. I was just concerned that as it stands, those are associated to each other. But if that means that it's got to be built in a way that when somebody is submitted to the database with male, that it maps as title A, then we need to work that through with Andy and the team.
I think it's also worth pointing out, and this is implicit, unless you've worked a lot with OpenActive standards, this won't be something you can take as read, but it's assumed that other schema.org properties can be used, and just what's being surfaced here are the kind of candidates for the most useful. There must be a schema.title or something like that that is sort of implicitly optional here.
Do you know what there's a job title a person has,
but there's not a schema.
I don't think there's a title.
All right. Oh, that's interesting. Okay.
Maybe for the same reason.
Yeah.
Instead, they have honorific prefix.
Oh, okay. So they use a more precise descriptor.
Honorific prefix and honorific suffix. Yes. That's right.
Oh, okay. Oh, I guess because title was probably taken for books, etc. Works of art.
Offer prefix and suffix for MD, PhD, prefix and optimistic. Yeah. But it's,
sorry.
Oh no, go on.
I thought you finished. Beg your pardon. Sorry to interrupt. I was going to ask about just the last one about the emergency contact. So is that the emergency contact number or emergency contact name, or is it both?
It's a person presently, and
for the person, so it'd be a name but not a contact number.
A name and a number, I think, is what is. It's somewhere in the spec. There's a detail. It's C3, Tim. If you scroll down.
Oh, sorry. Right. Thank you. Yeah.
Those two. They're
Yeah. Fine. Sorry, I didn't see that.
Okay, and 1 minute left on the call. I'll just say, any other business from anyone to raise in this, or for discussion next time, maybe?
No worries. I'll send an email.
It's worth. Sorry, I was going to say that none of these are currently required in the person. So although honorific prefix could be used, it's not required property. So if brokers don't support that, then you might want to still be able to map from gender. Just to kind of make that point that.
But at least they'll get more
that might be a good
yeah, it could be the gender note needs expansion there, but we can pick that up next call. Okay, thank you very much for your time, everyone. I think that was a really useful conversation on picking particularly how the actions would work. I think there was some useful clarity arrived at there, and I will see you all either next Wednesday or next Thursday, I hope. Thanks very much.
See you next week, everyone.
Bye, everybody. Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.